I wanted to give a response to Clayton's post specifically on the issue of religious faith. And once again, I'd like to take us back to birth and the genesis of the individual, the birth of a person. What happens here is that the child's in its mother's womb, and eventually the child is born out into the real world. And from the child's perspective, all they can tell is that they're very, like cold, afraid, hungry, all these things, these very, very vulnerable things. And there's something that's bigger than them that they can't really relate with yet that's taking care of them, that's satisfying these needs. And as they get older, they learn to kind of make a distinction between themselves and their mother, and they realize there's also a father in this picture, and they start realizing, maybe more in a factual sense, they start plugging different facts onto what they already know to be the case. From the get-go, they have this instinct of what was going on, but slowly they learn more and more. Eventually, they actually learn to relate with their mother and their father, and they realize that their mother and their father and their brothers and their sisters and stuff also have the same kind of perception of the world. They have these same needs. They get hungry, they get lonely, they get afraid, all these things. And they start realizing that, we're kind of the same here. They start creating commonalities, and they start creating this mental image of what it means to be a person, what it means to be a human being. They create a form, so to speak, of what it means to be human. And I use that term very specifically because I'm linking it to Plato's theory of forms. Plato's theory of forms is essentially that what emerges from all of our experiences are different forms. We see the shape of a square, we see the shape of a circle by experiencing tons of these. But what emerges from all of them is the perfect form in our mind. But the perfect form is actually never seen by us in this world. We can always whittle things down. We can always look closer and closer to the circle and eventually find imperfections, but we still have this mental projection of this form, this perfect form. And I use that same imagery because that's what happens in our own intuitions as we examine people, that we're able to perceive everyone as having certain faults, but from the grand spectrum of all the different people we've known, our perfect form emerges. What is more is that as we get older, the huge parent-type relationship that we have with our parents, where they are so much better than us and we are so small in comparison to them, begins to lessen. I remember, just to express this understanding, I remember when I first got into the conservatory at UMKC, I was in the piano department, and up until that point, I hadn't really been exposed to real remarkable pianists, even though I thought that I maybe had been. I remember within the first couple of weeks of being at the conservatory, I watched some of the professors as well as some of the people who came and visited to perform. I watched them do things on the piano I didn't even know was possible. Like, my mind was so blown. Like, I had a standard of what it means to be a good pianist, and in other words, there were people that so far exceeded that what happened is they left me so far behind in the dust with their ability that it seemed like perfection to me. I had no ability to even critique them because they were so far more capable than I was. And that's kind of the relationship we end up having with our parents from the get-go, is that they, even though they're similar to us, are so much more capable than we are that it's impossible for us to critique them and see them as anything but perfect because of our lack of understanding, because of our lack of ability. Also, another thing I like to add on to this is as our world expands, it begins with maybe only kind of perceiving me and mom, and then eventually you realize, there's a house and there's a yard and there's a town and a city, and things get bigger and bigger. But at the beginning, it seems that mom and dad are sovereign over this. It seems that they control everything. It seems they have this kind of sovereign power. But as you get bigger, the child is able to see that they don't have control over like the weather and trees, and they realize there's kind of a bigger world, a bigger universe. And that's when they make the instinctual leap that there is an ultimate agent, a capital A agent, a capital D deity, that is sovereign over all of these things in the same way that dad is sovereign over the house or mom is sovereign, however you want to put that. And that would be what I would call the first instinctual, intuitive step of faith. It's that our instinct within us gives us the response that there is a deity, there is something else, there's an ultimate agent that created the trees and the mountains and all these things. But the second aspect comes when our competency reaches that of our parents. What I mean by that is we experience perfection in them simply because of ignorance. The universe is always expanding. We are constantly gaining insights and understanding, and eventually, when at one point we're in this one down, one up relationship with our parents, eventually we get to the place where we see eye to eye with them, where they don't have this ability to just completely wow us with their perfect execution. We start seeing their imperfections. We start seeing that they are not a perfect form. What is more is we continue to have this mental schema of what a perfect form could be. And it's at that point that I would say we take the second aspect of faith, which is acknowledging or eliminating that as a personal God. Meaning that people we relate with, we see as having the same characteristics of ourselves. We see that they have beliefs, desires, intentions. We have this ability to, with our left hemisphere of our brain, empathize with them and see from their perspective. And if God is a person, then we can do the same thing with him. And he can understand me, I can understand him, and we can have a relational understanding of one another. Not a disconnected deistic relationship with him where this God is the one who, created the trees, mountains, all those things that you are able to intuitively pick up on as a child. But also, even more than that, you go one step further and understand him to be a personal God who relates with you on a personal level. And that would be the second aspect of faith. And just to kind of define this even a little bit further, what you'll read if you get into any like therapy literature, especially like Dan Siegel with his whole interpersonal neurobiology, that whole methodology, is this division between the physical world and the mental world. And this is just developing this concept further. The physical world deals with facts and causes. And you often hear people talking about other people as like, oh, they're kind of a linear thinker. And that's kind of what they're saying. They're saying they have a real strong left brain understanding of this world. These people are often very successful, very meticulous, very precise. But then there's right brain thinkers, people who are their strength is in the mental world, not the physical world, but the mental world. They're able to see things from other people's point of view. They're able to instinctively pick up on, subtle things in relationship. These are your personalities that are more like, they're kind of like the life of the party and stuff, and they're super careless and able to like make friends with anybody. Essentially what it comes down to is not any kind of physical sense of other people, but rather a mental sense of other people. You can see things from other people's point of view. You can pick up on what's going on with them. This is the right hemisphere of the brain. This is where we get, concepts like instinct, intuition, that way of relating to the world. And the relational world is built on the foundation of trust and empathy. If you can't trust people, what you do is you end up going completely into your left hemisphere of your brain. You treat everything as if it's just a bunch of facts and, causal relationships, and you never end up tapping into that relational world. But that relational world is where like all relationships begin. People, easy way to even remember the right hemisphere of the brain is the relational hemisphere of the brain. It's the mental. It catches up on those things. And that's how we relate with God. We relate with God on a basis of trust and relating to him and empathy with him rather than that of, like all these like facts about him and stuff. And this is how, then again, it relates to loving God and loving others. This is a very relational commission. This is a very relational understanding, is that he's revealed himself in other people because he himself is a person. He himself is a relating being. That's what it means to be in the image of God, in the form of God, is that he has created us in such a manner as to reflect his qualities, so that when we talk to other people, we in a manner of speaking learn about God, and when we talk to God, we in a manner of speaking learn about other people. This is essentially, this is what it means to reflect the image of God. This is what it means to be in the form of God. And this is how faith in God works. It's that instinctual ability to not only pick up that there is a deity, but also the further ability to actually trust and relate with him on a personal level.